You remember the day the sky fell? It was not a day of fire and thunder. It was a day of impossible silence. Great ships, dark and absolute, blotted out our sun. They did not speak with weapons. They spoke with shadows. You remember the choice they gave us? It was no choice at all. Serve in chains or perish in freedom. We were a young species, full of fire. But we were not fools. We saw their power. We understood the finality in their gaze. So we surrendered. We gave them our worlds. We gave them our cities and our fields. We gave them our bodies to command. We did it all to spare our lives. It was a bargain made in fear, a promise to live as less than we were. They thought they had won. They thought the story of humanity was over. Just another chapter in their long history of conquest. They were very, very wrong. They took everything from us but the one thing that mattered. The wardens arrived to be our shepherds. They were giants of flesh and steel. Their forms blended biology with cold machinery. They stood 3 times our height. Their voices were the grinding of stones. They saw us as children, curious pets to be managed and observed. Our art was quaint. Our science was primitive. Our passions were fleeting and illogical. They catalogued us with detached amusement. They couldn't even tell a good knock-knock joke. They patrolled our quieted worlds. Their heavy footfalls were the new rhythm of our lives, a constant reminder of our cage. They watched our every move. They monitored our every action. But they never thought to monitor our thoughts. Our minds, they believed, were harmless things, fragile constructs of emotion and instinct. They could not conceive of a thought as a tool. They could not imagine a will as a weapon. This was their first mistake. It would also be their last. They sealed us on reservation planets, worlds chosen for their blandness. The skies were always a soft, even gray. The ground was flat and featureless. It was a life inside a glass box, a perfect, sterile, and quiet prison. Our bodies became still. There was no need to run. There was no need to build or strive. The wardens provided for our every physical need. Food appeared on schedule. Shelters maintained a perfect temperature. Our lives were ordered, safe, and empty. This stillness became a strange gift. With nothing to do, we began to think. With nowhere to go, we traveled inward. Our thoughts, once scattered by daily struggle, began to race. They grew sharp and focused in the silence. We sat in our perfect homes. We looked out at the gray, unchanging landscape. The wardens saw docile prisoners. They saw a species tamed and broken. They did not see the storm gathering behind our eyes. We closed our eyes and found something new. It was not a memory or a dream. It was a presence, a faint echo in the silent darkness of the mind. Someone else was there. Someone else was reaching out. At first, it was just a flicker, a feeling of not being alone in your own head. Then came a whisper of emotion, a wave of sorrow from a stranger across town, a surge of defiance from a soul across the continent. We were all feeling the same cage. We learned to focus on that feeling, to push our own consciousness toward it. A silent network grew in the dark. It was a web woven from shared hope and quiet desperation. It connected us, mind to mind, across the empty miles. There were no words. There was no sound. There was only understanding, a pure and instant connection. We found each other in the one place they could not follow. We were prisoners no more, not in our minds. We built a new home without substance, a shared mental space we called the emptiness. Here we were not bound by gravity. We were not limited by our frail bodies. We shaped this inner world with our will. We built cities of pure light. We raised mountains of shared memory. We filled oceans with our collective dreams. It was a kingdom made of thought, a place where our minds could finally run free, a refuge where we could be human again. In the emptiness, we were architects and artists. We were explorers and philosophers. We relearned the joy of creation. We debated the nature of our new existence. We even came up with a new sport. It was like soccer, but the ball complained a lot. This new world was our secret, our sanctuary. It was the one place the wardens could never touch. They owned our bodies, our planets, our sun. But they did not own our imagination. And our imagination was now our home. Our captors patrolled our quiet streets. Their sensor arrays swept over our still forms. They registered calm biological readings, steady heart rates, low adrenaline. They saw a population at peace, a success story in pacification. They never knew a rebellion was growing inside us, a revolution fought without a single weapon. They walked through our cities, deaf and blind. They stood guard over empty shells. The real us was a galaxy away, building a fortress of thought. Our unseen fortress grew stronger every day. More minds joined the silent chorus. The shared space of the emptiness expanded. It became more stable, more complex. We were a civilization reborn in the dark. We watched the wardens from our mental perch. We saw them as they truly were. Beings of immense power, but no insight. They understood matter and energy. They did not understand the spirit. They could break a body, but never a will. Inside the emptiness, we began to experiment. We had built a world of thought. Could we make our thoughts touch the world outside? We started small, focusing our collective will on a single point in space. We learned to push our thoughts outward. We imagined a force, a gentle pressure. We focused on a single leaf on a tree. We pictured it trembling, ever so slightly. And after hours of effort, the leaf shivered. It was a victory that shook our new world. We sharpened the mind's edge. We practiced this new skill relentlessly. 100 minds focusing on a cup of water, making the surface ripple. 1,000 minds working together, making a pebble rise an inch from the ground. It was harder than getting a teenager to clean their room. A focused will could bend the light. We learned to create minute distortions in the air. We could make a warden's gaze slide past a certain spot. We could create a flicker in their sensors. We were ghosts in our own homes. We were learning to haunt our captors. We touched the minds of their simple machines. The warden's technology was complex, but at its core were simple logic gates, on or off, yes or no. We found we could influence those simple choices. A focused thought could flip a single switch. It began with a whisper in the machine. A door that should have been locked was suddenly open. A surveillance camera that watched a public square turn to face a blank wall for a few seconds. These were tiny, isolated incidents, easily dismissed as minor glitches. But we grew bolder. A team of minds would work together, unlocking a supply depot for another group to access, causing a warden's patrol drone to reboot its navigation system. Each small act was a test, a proof of our growing strength. Our whispers became a quiet conversation with their network. The wardens built their empire on perfect automation, a system so reliable they no longer watched it closely. We used that trust against them. We became the glitches in their perfect world. The wardens do not dream. Their minds were powerful, logical engines. They processed trillions of calculations per second. They could architect stars and engineer worlds. But they possessed no imagination, no capacity for abstract thought. They saw the universe as a machine to be controlled, a series of physical laws to be exploited. A weapon was a thing that fired a projectile. A defense was a thing that generated a shield. Their thinking was rigid, linear, and predictable. They could not imagine a weapon without a body. They could not conceive of a rebellion without an army. The concept of consciousness as a force was alien to them. It was a variable that did not exist in their equations. It's like they thought a story was just a bunch of words in order. And so they missed every sign. The minor system glitches were logged and forgotten. The strange energy readings were attributed to solar flares. They looked for threats in the physical world. They never thought to look for a threat in the silence of our minds. Our silent call crossed the great void. We had mastered our own prison. We reached out from the emptiness, a focused wave of pure consciousness, a question sent into the star-strewn darkness. Are you there? Are you like us? For a long time, there was only silence. Then, a reply. Not from a human mind. It was different. Older, stranger, and more alien. A consciousness of crystal and light. A species caged on a world of methane seas. They were prisoners, just like us. We found other voices, a race of beings who communicated through scent, caged in a jungle prison, another who lived as pure energy, trapped inside a magnetic bottle. The wardens had conquered many. They had imprisoned dozens of species. They had made the same mistake with all of them. They locked away the bodies. They ignored the power of the mind. Each species had found its own version of the emptiness. Each had been hiding, waiting, and dreaming of freedom. We prepared a single, unified thought, all of us together. Humans, the crystal beings, the scent talkers, the energy entities. Dozens of species, billions and billions of minds, all connected through the vast, silent network we had built. A chorus of 1 billion souls. The thought was not a weapon of destruction. It was simpler. It was more elegant. It was a single, universal command, a piece of code written in the language of pure will. The command was simple: shut down. We aimed this thought at the heart of the Warden Empire, not at their ships or their soldiers. We aimed it at the central control networks, the automated systems that manage their entire civilization, the power grids, the communication relays, the containment field generators. We spent months refining it, ensuring every mind was in perfect harmony, every will bent to the same purpose. It was the largest collaborative project in the history of the known universe. A silent, coordinated effort on a galactic scale. The final rehearsal was ready. Our whisper entered their empire's heart. The single thought, shut down, propagated through their systems. It was not a virus. It was not a hack. It was a command given with the force of 1 billion minds. A command the simple machines could not disobey. The great unraveling begins. A power station on their home world went dark. A fleet of patrol ships found their navigation systems offline. The automated factories that built their war machines fell silent. The changes were small at first, isolated flickers in a vast network. But the failures began to cascade. Each shutdown system put more strain on the others. Communication blackouts caused logistical chaos. Automated defenses failed to report their status. The Warden's perfect, efficient empire began to crumble from within. They were blind and deaf. Their sensors reported system failures everywhere. But they could find no cause, no physical attack, no energy weapon signature, just a quiet, creeping paralysis. Their tools had been turned against them, and they had no idea how. For the first time, the wardens felt us. As their technology failed, the background noise of their empire faded. And in that sudden silence, they heard the whisper, the collective consciousness of 1 billion souls pressing in on them, an unseen presence they could not strike. Their minds, so logical and rigid, reeled in confusion. It was like a mathematician suddenly facing a feeling of being watched by a ghost, a pressure on their thoughts, a presence that was everywhere and nowhere. Fear bloomed in a god's mind. They tried to fight back. Their warships floated dead in space. Their soldiers stood on our worlds, cut off from command. They raised their physical weapons, but who were they to shoot? They were titans fighting a shadow, a war against an enemy that existed only in their heads. Panic spread through their species. The masters of the physical universe were helpless. Their empire was falling apart around them, and a silent, invisible force was watching them, judging them. For the first time in millennia, the wardens knew fear. The containment fields blinked and died, on our world and on 100 others. The humming energy barriers that had defined our existence simply vanished. The shutdown command had reached the local prison networks. The chains simply fade away. The gates to our world swung open. The automated sentries powered down. The orbital weapons platforms went inert. There was no grand explosion, no final battle. Just a quiet, sudden, and total freedom. We stood in our doorways, looking up at the sky. We took our first steps out of the cages, not as conquerors, but as something new. The wardens were still there, stranded, confused, and terrified. They were giants of steel, now powerless before the power of a thought. We looked at our former masters. We felt no hatred. We felt a strange kind of pity. They were so powerful in one dimension, so utterly blind in another. They had taught us a valuable lesson by accident. The body is a vessel, but the mind is the sea. We emerged from our prisons changed forever. We were human, but we were also something more. We were connected to a galactic chorus of minds. We had touched the void and found friends in the darkness. We had fought a war and won without firing a shot. We left the wardens on their broken worlds. Their empire was a relic. Their power was an illusion that had been shattered. They were a lesson for the galaxy, a reminder that true strength is not in what you can build or break. We stepped out into a new universe, a universe that was suddenly much larger. We were explorers again, but we would not explore with ships of steel. We would explore with the limitless power of our thoughts. They locked our bodies, but in doing so, they had freed our minds. And our minds were now free to touch the stars.